Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. This is your Akazaki Yahoo, and I start this broadcast as I would start any broadcast by first of all giving all praise, honor, and great esteem unto the Most High Power, Yahuwah, Bahashem, Yahushua HaMashiach, and to the 12 tribes of Israel who are scattered to the four quarters of the earth. I'll say Shalom Wabaruki, that is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait to the day that the Most High fulfills his promise and brings us back to him as we are scattered to the four quarters of the earth. Praises to the Father. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
I am joined this afternoon by my most esteemed Akinanaya. Shabbat shalom, my king.
Shabbat shalom, Maki. Shabbat shalom, Yasharal. Call halal Yahweh. Bahashem, Yahweh Shah HaMashiach. Wahawa Kakwadash.
Hallelujah. Yes, indeed. All praises to the Father in the name of the Son, the Messiah, uh, and to the Ruach, the set apart
Mm-hmm.
spirit of the Most High. Yes, indeed. Praises to the Father and all that He has done for us and through us. We have another review for you this Sabbath morning, and let's get directly to it. All praises. All right, here we go.
Throughout the history of the United States, Black Americans suffered a multitude of atrocities, including widespread and brutal massacres that occurred across the country. These massacres, often fueled by racism and white supremacy, have resulted in the deaths of countless innocent Black men, women, and children. From the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921 to the MOVE bombing in 1985, these horrific events have left deep scars on the Black community and serve as a painful reminder of the systemic oppression and violence we have faced for centuries. In this video, we will examine 10 of the most devastating incidents of violence against Black Americans throughout history. These massacres resulted in the loss of countless innocent lives and left deep wounds in the Black community. We must acknowledge and learn from these tragedies in order to move towards a more just and
All right. One brief moment. You know, I found it I found it ironic that I didn't learn about the Tulsa, Oklahoma bombing until I was an adult. I never heard about that in school, and I'm sure a lot of what he's going to bring out here probably is things that we never heard about outside of
Wasn't taught this
the
in
school.
school.
Right. Exactly. So, continue.
equitable society. Let's start off with the Atlanta Massacre. The 1880s marked a turning point for Atlanta, as the bustling city became the epicenter of the regional economy. With the influx of new residents, the city's population skyrocketed from 89,000 in 1900 to a staggering 150,000 by 1910. But with this growth came a host of challenges, including increased pressure on municipal services, job competition between Black and white workers, and rising class distinctions. In response, the city's white leadership implemented restrictions designed to control the behavior of the burgeoning working class, with mixed results. However, the social intermingling of the ensuing races was a cause for concern among the city's elite whites. This led to an expansion of Jim Crow segregation, particularly in the form of separating white and Black neighborhoods and establishing separate seating areas for public transportation. The Black population also grew significantly, from approximately 9,000 in 1880 to 35,000 by 1900, exacerbating tensions between the races. The emergence of a Black elite in Atlanta during Reconstruction led to increased racial tensions in the city. Black men gained the right to vote and began establishing businesses, social networks, and communities. However, as the Black elite gained wealth and prestige, they distanced themselves from the Black working class and saloon goers, causing discomfort among some whites. Prohibition campaigns were launched against saloons, which were blamed for rising crime rates and threats of sexual violence against white women, further fueling racial tensions. The Atlanta Race Massacre of 1906 was sparked by sensationalized newspaper reports of the alleged rapes of 4 white women by Black men. The violence, which lasted from September 22nd to September 24th, resulted in the deaths of at least 25 Black people and 2 whites. Although unofficial reports suggest a higher death toll, Black Americans were hung, shot, beaten, and stabbed to death, and white mobs destroyed homes and businesses in Black neighborhoods. The violence only ended after the intervention of the Georgia National Guard, although accusations were made against some guardsmen and the Atlanta Police Department for participating in the violence. White historians largely ignored the massacre for decades, and it was not until 2006, on its 100th anniversary, that the event was publicly marked and later made part of the state's curriculum for public schools. But the gruesome killings of Black Americans didn't stop in 1906. Just 17 years after the Atlanta massacre, an even more traumatic event unfolded in Rosewood, a small town in Florida.
Yeah, so like I said, I would pretty much not recall any of this in the school and learning in high school or any time before that. I don't recall anything from the Atlanta massacre, or anything of that sort, or anything of a different name. So yeah, this video is accurately depicting, the abandonment of the history that, as they wasn't teaching us this. If they're teaching it in Georgia, that's one thing, but I didn't learn that in Arkansas.
Yeah, oftentimes, it's the picture is painted that everything was all lovey-dovey after the end or the abolishment of slavery.
Right.
They would talk about how the Ku Klux Klan rose up and how Jim Crow laws were implemented in the civil rights movement, but they negate and neglect to speak about the atrocities that were continued to be carried out against our people, which is what's the word I'm looking for? It's a travesty that they don't speak about it,
Right.
and what these schools are programming stations for our people.
Indeed, yeah, it puts us in a mind frame to where, because if we really dealt with things properly and in order, that's why a lot of people hate these movies that come out, because they feel like it's an overreach or whatever the case. Like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Yeah, it was worse. It was worse than what you think it was. So, indeed. Continuing here, going into Rosewood. Rosewood is one that we're familiar with because they made a movie. You know
Yes, indeed. That's exactly what I was getting ready to say. Yep.
All right, here we go.
In the early 1920s, the small town of Rosewood, Florida, was a thriving community of African Americans. Residents lived in relative peace and prosperity until a horrifying incident of racial violence turned their lives upside down. Everything changed on January 4th, 1923, when rumors of an alleged attack by a Black man on a white woman sparked a wave of terror. Within hours, armed white mobs descended on the town, shooting at residents and burning buildings to the ground. As chaos reigned, some Rosewood residents fled to nearby swamps and sought refuge in the home of a white businessman, while others tried to fight back. One man, Sylvester Carrier, took up arms and engaged in a shootout that left 2 white men dead. The news of Carrier's retaliation quickly spread, and soon hundreds of white vigilantes joined the mob. The violence continued for 3 days, leaving almost all of Rosewood in ruins, and its surviving residents fleeing for their lives. Despite a grand jury investigation, no one was held accountable for the atrocities committed against the Black neighborhood of Rosewood. What became known as the Rosewood Massacre of 1923 lasted several days, during which white mobs descended upon the predominantly African American town, leaving a trail of destruction and death. The violence was so extreme that virtually every building in the town was burned to the ground, leaving a scar on the community that would last for decades. The official death toll of the Rosewood Massacre in 1923 may have been recorded as only 8 people, 6 Black and 2 white, but survivors' stories tell a different, much darker tale. Many claim that up to 27 Black residents were killed, and that newspapers failed to report the true number of white deaths. Eyewitnesses have even spoken of a mass grave filled with Black bodies, covered with a plow brought in from Cedar Key. Despite these claims, authorities were unable to confirm them, as many of the witnesses were deceased or too frail to lead them to the alleged site. The Rosewood Massacre remained a buried chapter in history for over half a century, until an investigative reporter named Gary Moore uncovered the horrific details in 1982. Survivors of the tragedy were finally able to tell their stories, leading to a renewed national interest in the incident. In 1994, the Florida legislature passed a bill to compensate the few remaining Rosewood victims for their losses, providing $150,000 in total. The tragic events of Rosewood were brought to a wider audience through the 1997 film Rosewood, directed by John Singleton. Yet again, it doesn't end here, as the series of events that led to the Springfield Massacre will leave you in greater shock.
Springfield Massacre. I'm not familiar with that one, but yeah, I think the vast majority, like I said, the information we got in Rosewood was from that movie, and whatever other literature, if you did any kind of research, you could find more information, the things that weren't covered in the movie. But I remember Don Cheadle playing Sylvester, that
Store
name.
owner, or was it? He was the mayor.
No, he was a uh,
Sheriff.
I can't remember what his occupation was, but he was very affluent. He was very rich. He had a piano in his house, and it was him and his mother, and he had a wife, and they had children, and uh, yeah, he dressed real nice, and well, like they dress, but he dressed real nice, and he spoke very proper,
Like he was educated,
educated. Yeah,
yeah, I
yes,
think
indeed.
I remember that as well.
Yeah,
Want to say it was the first movie that I saw Vin Rames playing in.
yeah. I think it was the first time I saw him. Yeah, because he played like a traveler, but a guy
Mm-hmm.
that had been in the army,
Okay,
and he
con.
was no nonsense. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So he had a lot of money because when you're in the military, you don't have to pay for stuff, but you're getting paid, and so you're able to save a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times. And so yeah, he came there to be amongst the high society and to find himself a wife. And uh, but yeah, I can't remember that last name, but he just said it in that first one. So we'll move on to the Springfield Massacre. So let's continue.
The Springfield Race Riot of 1908, also known as the Springfield Massacre, was a two-day riot in Springfield, Illinois, on August 14th and 15th, 1908. It was a violent and deadly event that had a profound impact on the city and its residents. The riot resulted in the deaths of both black and white individuals, with estimates ranging from 5 to 40 deaths. It is said to have begun on August 14th, 1908, after two black men, George Richardson and Joe James, were secretly moved out of jail to avoid a lynching by a white mob. The situation escalated when a white mob gathered outside the Sangamon County Jail and demanded that the two men be turned over to them. The mob, which numbered in the thousands, was outraged by the idea that the accused men would be given a fair trial, and they were determined to take matters into their own hands. After the mob had unleashed its anger on the homes of black families in Springfield, they continued their violence in small communities beyond the city limits, specifically targeting stores with firearms and ammunition. The mob leaders gave careful instructions to participants, directing them to destroy only homes and businesses owned by black people and that served black customers, while sparing nearby white establishments. As an act of self-defense, some black residents in Springfield fought back by returning fire when they were attacked. Scott Burton, the first victim of the lynch mob, attempted to save his home and his life by using his shotgun. William Donegan, an 84-year-old cobbler, was the second victim lynched, allegedly due to his marriage to a white woman that had tainted his reputation in the eyes of the mob. The rioting continued for 2 days, and the white mob targeted black businesses and homes, burning and looting them. The National Guard was called in to restore order. In the aftermath of the riot, many black-owned homes, businesses, and churches were destroyed, causing property damage that amounted to over $150,000 in 1908. The destruction of property and the fear of further violence forced thousands of black residents to leave Springfield, with many never returning. The aftermath of the riot left 6 black people dead, 2 lynched, and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of property destroyed. The violence also caused approximately 2,000 black people to be driven out of Springfield. The Springfield Race Riot was a turning point in the fight for civil rights in the United States, as it highlighted the deep racial tensions and discrimination in American society at the time. It also led to the formation of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which was established in 1909 in response to the riot and other incidents of racial violence. The Springfield Massacre is now recognized as a significant event in the history of the civil rights movement. And 2 years after the Springfield Massacre, there was a harrowing series of events that led to the killing of African Americans by white supremacists in Slocum.
Wow. So we never covered in history American history. All those years I took American history in school, we never covered the formation where the NAACP came from or what spawned the NAACP. It's amazing how the curriculum was so corrupted. And,
Uh-huh.
it's really crazy because you think about it, like looking at this now and remembering back then, like, I don't remember that. Like, we never talked about that. We talked about Martin Luther King, a little bit about Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, and that's really all I remember. George Washington Carver, we talked about him. Uh, what was the brother that made the traffic light?
Benjamin Banneker.
Benjamin Banneker. Yeah, yeah. We talked about him. We talked about a couple of those ones,
Hmm.
but that was really it. Like mostly was Martin Luther King. Uh, like I said, we talked a little bit about Malcolm X, very little, but yeah, not anywhere near. We certainly didn't cover any of these situations. Um, Even going to Little Rock Central, we did watch uh, they had that movie with Morris Chestnut was in it. I can't remember the name of it. I think it was a Little Rock Nine or something like that.
Hmm.
Uh, that was so many years ago. I can't hardly remember. But yeah, yeah, they just gave us what they wanted us to have and left the rest of it to nothing. All right, continue. Slocum.
The Slocum Massacre of 1910 was a tragic event that took place in Slocum, Texas, United States. It was a brutal racial massacre targeted at blacks and resulted in the deaths of a larger number of African Americans. The incident is often referred to as the worst racial massacre in Texas history. Slocum was a small town in East Texas with a population of over 400 people, half of which was African Americans. The town was located in an area with a history of racial tensions and violence, and many white residents were members of the Ku Klux Klan. Prior to the massacre, a lynching of a black man in the nearby Cherokee County ignited racial tensions in the Slocum area. White rumors spread that black residents had been gathering in Slocum to plan an armed uprising. The tensions further escalated when a white man attempted to collect a disputed debt from a well-respected black farmer named Abe Wilson, and even worsened when an African American was put in charge of soliciting aid for road improvements by a road construction foreman. A confrontation ensued, enraging Jim Spurger, a local white farmer, who emerged as the primary instigator of the conflict that led to the massacre. Numerous newspapers and eyewitness accounts documented that Spurger initiated the events by alleging that blacks had threatened him. Fueled by Spurger and other white vigilantes, a furious mob consisting of heavily armed white men from various parts of Anderson County rampaged through Slocum in multiple groups. According to certain accounts, up to 200 men laid siege to the town, indiscriminately firing their guns at black residents. As survivors of the carnage spread the word, African Americans fled in terror. The white mobs pursued the fleeing blacks into the nearby forests and marshes, shooting them in the back. All initial newspaper reports depicted African Americans as armed instigators, which were severe distortions of the truth. Newspapers initially reported 8 to 22 deaths of black residents, but the black community claimed a minimum of 40 and potentially over 200 victims. The Anderson County Sheriff, William H. Black, found it challenging to determine the exact death toll due to the scattered bodies in the woods. Many black residents fled during and after the massacre, abandoning their assets to save their lives. White residents later seized their properties, such as Jack Hawley's dairy, granary, general store, and 700 acres of land, after he and his family escaped the town. The Slocum Massacre of 1910 is a reminder that the fight for equality and justice is historic, and that we must continue to work towards a more just and equitable society for all Americans. And as Black Americans strive for economic prosperity and improved welfare in Thibodaux, their efforts are faced with the most shocking form of opposition. Before we get into it, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way in helping our message get pushed out to more people. Thank you for the support. Now let's move on to the next massacre.
So Slocum. No, never heard of that one. This is my first time hearing about that one. When he said Slocum, I wondered if there's any correlation with remember that movie Kingdom Come? That was their name, Slocum, the Slocums in that movie. I don't know if you might not recall that one, but I wonder if there's any correlation there as to why that was their name. If he was trying to tell us something kind of subliminally.
So, like, what happened in that movie? Because I don't remember it off the top of my head, even the name of it.
It was really a comedy. It was LL Cool J was in it.
Okay, I do. Yeah, I do
Yeah,
remember that now. Yeah,
yeah. Anthony Anderson,
and
yeah,
Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi
yeah,
Goldberg was the
yeah.
mama, right?
It had an
Yeah,
all-star cast, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Whoopi Goldberg was the mother. The father died. They was coming to do the funeral, and so on and so forth. So it really wasn't like a historical type of thing, but I just wondered if I remember her hollering, "We got the Slocums,"
Right.
and so when he said that name of that city, it kind of made me think about that, and I wonder if he was just kind of subliminally trying to tell us, remember Slocum, uh, what was it, Illinois?
No,
Oh,
that was Texas.
Texas, my bad, Slocum, Texas.
hmm
And by the way, I wonder if he's gonna mention the 42 or the
That
42nd.
was when the soldiers were imprisoned for standing up for their rights in Texas, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just found out about that when that movie came out. Uh,
Me as well.
yeah, because a lot of this stuff hadn't been talked about. So let's see what this one is here. I think this one about the Native Americans.
On November 23rd, 1887, black sugarcane workers in Thibodaux, Louisiana, sought to unionize and demand fair wages during the crucial harvest season. However, their peaceful protest ended in tragedy. These workers endured harsh conditions, long hours, and meager pay, with scripts that could only be used at plantation stores. The Knights of Labor, one of the few unions that organized black workers, encouraged the sugar cutters to demand $1.25 a day in cash. Despite unsuccessful attempts in the past, the cutters believed they could succeed during the rolling season when planter demands for workers was high. Junius Bailey, a 29-year-old schoolteacher and union leader, negotiated with growers for better conditions, but the negotiations failed and somehow resulted in a violent massacre. On November 22nd, when the growers refused to negotiate and terminated the union members, the workers called a strike. For the next 3 weeks, approximately 10,000 laborers, the largest farming industry strike, refused to work, affecting Lafourche, Terrebonne, St. Mary, and Assumption parishes. In the meantime, white vigilantes restricted Thibodaux, seeking to identify strikers and demanding passes from any black individuals entering or leaving town. As morning broke on November 23rd, gunfire erupted from the cornfield, injuring 2 white guards, a sad event which triggered the beginning of the massacre. The planters convinced former sugar planter and Democratic Governor Samuel P. McHenry to deploy several units of the all-white state militia. The militia, commanded by ex-Confederate General P.G.T. Beauregard, brought a .45 caliber Gatling gun, while the paramilitary groups positioned themselves outside the Thibodaux courthouse. Both the militia and white vigilantes indiscriminately shot suspected strikers and any black people who crossed their path. Approximately 60 people were killed indiscriminately, with many of the strikers' bodies being discarded in unmarked graves. The killings continued to spread to other plantations, causing those who survived to hide in the woods and swamps. Despite being one of the deadliest events in U.S. labor history, the Southern white press praised the actions of the militia and vigilantes during the Thibodaux massacre. Andrew Price, a sugar planter who participated in the attacks, even won a seat in Congress in 1888. Many of those involved in the unlawful killings were honored with statues and public areas named after them, while the workers, including women and children, remained anonymous, with their murderers only recognized by their loved ones. It wasn't until the 1930s that black farm workers made another serious attempt at unionizing. Decades of sugar worker organizing came to an end after the massacre and the enactment of discriminatory state laws by white Democrats, which included the disenfranchisement of most black people. According to the historian John C. Rodrigue, defeated sugar workers were forced to return to the plantations on their employers' terms. This state of affairs persisted until the 1940s. Unfair, you will say, but the numbers keep increasing as we look at the massacre in Colfax, a small town in Louisiana.
Yeah, wow, Thibodeau. That's another one that I'm unfamiliar with, but one thing I would definitely advise any of my people who would watch these videos and hear this information, learn from these situations, because although we don't see things like this today, that don't mean that it's not some crazies out there that try to take things back to
Indeed,
back at this time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And my philosophy is don't get murdered with your hands up. Don't be giving up, and they kill you anyway. If they're gonna kill us, then we need to be, handling our
Going
business.
out like men.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Don't get killed with your hands up. So don't get murdered.
Slacky, I'm not trying to cut you off,
but
back on I believe it was January 6th of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
There was a uprising in Washington D.C. All it takes is for that situation could have gone down differently. These people were upset. We didn't hear about anybody being armed, but rest assured, these people were armed. And something go the wrong way or something that they don't agree with. These people will uprise.
Right.
And these we're hearing about these events. I think the one of them was 1897 or 1887. And then we hear about others in 1921. 1921 was only 102 years ago.
Right.
To me, that's not that long ago.
No.
We're talking about the great grandparents of people walking around today, of the elder people population today. So these things are not just in our distant history. And I guess we'll talk more about that when we get ready to conclude with this video. But
indeed. All right, continuing here.
On April 13th, 1873, the small town of Colfax, Louisiana, was the site of a battle-turned massacre between black and white residents. Approximately 150 black people and 3 white people were killed in the conflict. The massacre occurred in the aftermath of the highly contested Louisiana governor's race of 1872, which was won narrowly by the Republicans. Despite their victory, white Democrats were incensed and sought revenge. In Colfax Parish and other parts of the state, they organized a white militia to directly challenge the predominantly black state militia under the governor's control. Colfax Parish was emblematic of the political and racial divide in Louisiana at the time. The 4,600 voters in the 1872 election were split between approximately 2,400 mostly black Republican voters and 2,200 white Democratic voters. However, a specific incident sparked the Colfax massacre. On March 28th, local white Democratic leaders called for armed supporters to help them take the Colfax Parish courthouse from GOP office holders, who were predominantly black. The Republicans urged their supporters, who were also mostly black, to defend them. Although nothing happened on April 1st, fighting erupted between the two groups on the following day. On Easter Sunday, April 13th, more than 300 armed white men, including members of the white supremacist organizations, such as the Knights of White Camellia and the Ku Klux Klan, attacked the courthouse. When the white militia maneuvered a cannon to fire on the courthouse, some of the 60 black defenders fled, while others surrendered. The leaders of the attackers, James Hadnot, was accidentally shot by one of his own men, prompting the white militia to retaliate by shooting the black prisoners. Those who were wounded in the earlier battle, especially black militia members, were singled out for execution. The indiscriminate killing spread to African Americans, who had not been at the courthouse, and continued throughout the night. In total, around 150 African Americans were killed, with 48 being murdered after the initial battle. Only 3 whites were killed, and few were injured in the largely one-sided Battle of Colfax. After the massacre, the state militia under the control of Republican Governor William Kellogg arrived on April 14th and documented the violence. New Orleans police and federal troops also arrived in the following days to restore order. A total of 97 white militiamen were apprehended and charged with violating the U.S. Enforcement Act of 1870, also called the Ku Klux Klan Act. While a few were found guilty, they were eventually released in 1875 when the U.S. Supreme Court declared the Enforcement Act unconstitutional. However, no one was ever apprehended by the state of Louisiana or by intimidated local officials. And while this is gruesome, the massacre of East St. Louis indicates that there may have been some organized efforts in America to take out the black communities or silence their voices.
150 to 3. That's unreasonable. That's really unreasonable. That's what I said. The first once once you figure out that 2 to 3 of our people have been targeted, it's wartime. It's
Hmm.
not. There should be no. Let's try to come. No. When it's been 2 or 3, and you can identify that you have been targeted, that black people are being targeted. Uh, yeah, forget the peace talk. You know what I'm saying? Let the federal government come in and reestablish order, but don't let 150 of your people get killed and only 3 of them. That's totally unreasonable. Totally
It
unreasonable. So,
it just makes me wonder, like how many of our people were armed. You know you know how does that happen? I heard a sister. I was on Facebook the other day, and a sister was talking about how when she grew up, she grew up in the 50s,
mm,
and her community was, a predominantly black community. She said, and all these homes had fathers in them who had rifles.
right. Yeah.
I forget exactly where she said she was from, but it makes me wonder, man. Like, how does that happen? Like, did you not have weapons, or
Yeah.
and I also know, that it was a great deal of fear
Yeah.
with our people going on around this time as well. But we can't let fear ever rule us again.
Not at all. Not at all. Because here's the thing: they will wipe you out. They will wipe us out
Hmm.
and do it with no problem. And if we don't fight back, which is self defense, they will eradicate us. And they've proven that. 150 people killed. He didn't even break it down to men, women, and children. But 150. That's unreal. To three of them, and one of them was killed by their own people.
Right.
So yeah, that's can't have that. We won't see that ever again. So let's continue here.
In the early summer of 1917, East St. Louis, Illinois, was the scene of one of the most brutal and devastating racial attacks in U.S. history. Between 1916 and 1917, around 10,000 to 12,000 African Americans migrated to East St. Louis, Illinois, attracted by job prospects in the wartime industries. This influx of black workers into the city's industrial plants caused discomfort among many previously white residents who were not used to such a diverse population. What began as a series of labor disputes quickly escalated into a violent rampage as white Americans unleashed their fury on the city's black community. Over the course of several days, between 39 and 150 African Americans were brutally murdered, while another 6,000 were left homeless. The destruction of property was also significant, with an estimated $400,000 in damages. $8.46 million in 2021. The riots were so severe that they have been described as the worst case of labor-related violence in 20th century American history and among the worst racial riots in U.S. history. The brutality of the violence was even more disturbing as it happened soon after America's involvement in World War I. In the words of historian Winston James, in April, black soldiers were sent to fight for democracy, and in July, black individuals were brutally killed in East St. Louis. Children were thrown into burning homes. People were trapped in their homes before being set on fire, and it was a horrific event, even by American standards. In the aftermath, the city was left in shambles, and many black citizens left the city permanently. Despite the widespread destruction, the rioting was largely unchecked by local law enforcement, and the East St. Louis Chamber of Commerce called for the resignation of the police chief. The tragedy sparked a wave of protests across the country, with 10,000 black citizens marching in silent protest in New York City in condemnation of the violence. The government's reaction to the East St. Louis massacre was inadequate and disappointing. Although President Woodrow Wilson expressed his condolences, he did not take any concrete action to address the situation. He refused to meet with a delegation of black leaders who requested a meeting to discuss the issue. Additionally, the Illinois National Guard, responsible for maintaining order in the city, failed to protect black residents from the violence. Overall, the government's response demonstrated a lack of concern for the well-being of black individuals and a failure to uphold their rights as citizens. You may think this is upsetting, until you realize how police officers rained down bombs on black residents in Philadelphia.
Wow. I didn't know anything about East St. Louis, Illinois. The only thing that I can recall about that city was there was a fighter in the UFC from there, and he always emphasized that I'm from East St. Louis, and I always confused it with Missouri, but I think he was from Illinois.
Yeah, it's on the other side of the bridge from St. Louis.
Yeah. But that was it. I never heard about this situation either. He really didn't give us any numbers there. Just a bunch of people moving there, at the very beginning, but he didn't give us any total numbers. So we'll continue here. But this one is, let me see.
In 1985, the Philadelphia Police Department engaged in a confrontation with the Black Liberation Move organization, resulting in the destruction of residential homes in the Cobbs Creek neighborhood of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, United States. In a show of force, on May 13, 1985, approximately 500 police officers, led by City Manager Leo Brooks, attempted to remove Move members from a building and execute arrest warrants. To make the occupants leave, authorities shut off the water and electricity. At 5:35 a.m., Commissioner Sandberg delivered a speech to Move members, giving them 15 minutes to exit the premises. When the group refused to comply, the police reported to dropping a bomb on the building, where 7 adults and 6 children were present. During the 90-minute-long standoff, Move members fired at police officers, who retaliated with tear gas and both semi-automatic and automatic firearms. Using over 10,000 rounds of ammunition, one officer was struck in the back, but not severely injured. Finally, at 2 p.m., Commissioner Sambor ordered the bombing of the compound. While aboard a Pennsylvania State Police helicopter, Lieutenant Frank Powell of the Philadelphia Police Department dropped 2 bombs made of Tovex, a dynamite substitute, along with 2 pounds of C4, provided by the FBI, onto a fortified bunker-like cubicle on the roof of the house occupied by Move members. The police referred to these bombs as entry devices. The bombs detonated after 45 seconds, causing the gasoline-powered generator to ignite and starting a fire that engulfed the house. Authorities claim that this was a tactical move intended to burn through the roof and destroy the bunker so that tear gas could be deployed into the house to force out the occupants. Firefighters arrived on the scene 30 minutes later, but were met with gunfire, causing them and police officers to retreat as the fire spread to neighboring houses. Only 2 Move members, Bertie Africa, who was 13 years old at the time, and Ramona Africa, managed to escape the burning building. Initially, police claimed that 2 men had also fled the house and fired at them, prompting a return of fire. However, Ramona Africa disputed this account, alleging that police had opened fire on those attempting to flee. The police countered by claiming that Move members had been shooting at them while moving in and out of the house. The fire department ultimately brought the blaze under control at 11:47 p.m. Tragically, the fire that resulted from the bombing claimed the lives of 11 Move members, including 6 adults and 5 children: John Africa, Rhonda Africa, Teresa Africa, Frank Africa, Conrad Africa, Tree Africa, Delisha Africa, Netta Africa, Little Phil Africa, Tommaso Africa, and Raymond Africa. Additionally, the fire destroyed 61 neighboring homes, leaving approximately 250 individuals without a place to live. And while this was terrible, the Elaine Massacre is a crazy occurrence that remains a scar in the annals of time in Black history.
Yeah, I remember hearing about those people who are calling their last name was Africa. Mute. I have to do some go into that. I wonder what their belief setup was.
Well, I know Philadelphia is not Nation of Islam, but it's a lot of our people up there are in the religion of Islam. Okay. Whole neighborhoods, it's common, you look down the block and everybody's got Islamic garments on, when you go to Philly, man. So but with the name Africa, it doesn't really insinuate something to do with the Muslim,
Right. Yeah. I'm gonna have to dig deeper into that one. So,
but I would tell you this: with the force and these atrocities, these people with this last name Africa wasn't no punk. They wasn't, these people were afraid of them for some reason. So these weren't some timid Negroes. I
Right.
know, I can tell you that much.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, because considering that they dropping bombs, and they call it a compound that they had, so obviously they had to drop more than one. If you drop a bomb on this apartment I'm in, it won't take but one. So, but yeah, man, that's crazy. So yeah, let's continue.
The year was 1919, and tensions were running high in rural Phillips County, Arkansas. Phillips County, Arkansas was once a hub for cotton plantations, with enslaved African Americans working the land before the Civil War. Even in the early 20th century, the county's population was still predominantly black, with many of them working as illiterate farm laborers and sharecroppers. Despite the high number of African Americans in the community, the white landowners controlled the economy, creating a system that heavily favored them. White plantation owners sold cotton on their own schedule, controlled high-priced plantation stores, and settled accounts with sharecroppers in lump sums without listing items. The Elaine Massacre was a culmination of various factors, including a long history of racial tension and discrimination in Arkansas, economic exploitation of black sharecroppers, and fears of the growth of labor unions among African American farmers. In 1919, a group of black sharecroppers organized themselves into the Progressive Farmers and Household Union in order to improve their living and working conditions. However, this was viewed as a threat by white plantation owners and businessmen who controlled the area's economy and political power. On the night of September 30th, 1919, a group of black farmers met in a church near Elaine to discuss how to gain fair prices for their crops. A group of white men, who feared that the meeting was actually a gathering of black militants planning an insurrection, interrupted the meeting and a shootout ensued. Over the next several days, white mobs, including law enforcement officials and vigilantes, descended on the area and indiscriminately attacked black residents, including women and children. Reports vary, but it is estimated that anywhere from 100 to 800 African Americans were killed. 5 white people also lost their lives during the violence. The massacre was followed by a wave of arrests and trials of black residents, many of whom were falsely accused of participating in an insurrection. The white mobs responsible for the massacre were aided by federal troops and local terrorist organizations, with the Arkansas's governor leading a contingent of over 500 U.S. soldiers. The Elaine Massacre was the deadliest racial confrontation in Arkansas history, and one of the bloodiest in the history of the United States. But not only was this allowed to go down in history unchecked, but the hatred for blacks also continued to spread across the country. In 1921, African Americans had to deal with more trouble than racial and economic segregation somewhere in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah, and I'm born and raised in Arkansas and never heard about that one. It's like I never heard about that school that we covered some weeks ago, that a reform school where those boys burned alive.
It was this year where I learned about Elaine, Arkansas. I'm pretty sure if you go back check your messages, I sent you the Wikipedia about this Elaine massacre, and I remember you telling me then that you had never heard about it.
Oh yeah, Elaine. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, you would think something like that you hear about. We learn about in school, but no. Right here in Arkansas, we had the situation where these things went bad. No, we never. Like, if I was a history teacher, we'd be covering it. So, all right, continue.
In the aftermath of slavery, a glimmer of hope emerged in Tulsa, Oklahoma's Greenwood district, dubbed the Black Wall Street. Purchased in 1906 by wealthy black landowner O.W. Gurley, the area provided a sanctuary for formerly enslaved black people and sharecroppers fleeing from the racial terror that plagued other regions. The thriving community was home to successful black entrepreneurs, homeowners, and civic leaders who defied societal odds and flourished in their own right. But this progress was short-lived, as a horrific event would soon shatter the dreams and aspirations of the black community in Greenwood. On May 31st, 1921, everything changed. The Greenwood district of Tulsa was ravaged by a brutal and devastating race massacre, leaving dozens of black residents dead and thousands homeless. The massacre began when a young black man named Dick Rowland was accused of assaulting a white woman in an elevator, sparking tensions simmering for years in a city deeply divided along racial lines. Despite no evidence of assault, Rowland was arrested and placed in a Tulsa jail. As rumors of an impending lynching of Rowland spread, a group of armed black men went to the courthouse to protect him. A white mob met them, and a confrontation ensued. Shots were fired, and chaos erupted. The black men retreated to the Greenwood district, but the white mob followed, burning and looting homes and businesses in the area. The National Guard was called in, but instead of protecting the black community, they assisted the white mob in their destruction of the Greenwood district. Planes were even used to drop bombs on the area, causing widespread destruction and death. As the violence continued for 18 hours, an estimated 300 people lost their lives within the district's 35 square blocks. More than 1,200 homes, at least 60 businesses, dozens of churches, a school, a hospital, and a public library were reduced to ashes and rubble. These staggering figures were revealed in a report by Human Rights Watch documenting the sheer magnitude of the destruction wrought upon the once flourishing Greenwood district during the Tulsa Massacre. The aftermath of the massacre was just as harrowing as the event itself. While the estimated damages totaled $1.4 million, experts suggest it underestimated the true cost. Survivors, many of whom lost their homes and businesses, never received government assistance or restitution for their losses. The impact of the massacre was felt for generations to come. The Tulsa Massacre was a horrific event in American history, and its impact on the black community in Tulsa was felt for decades. It serves as a painful reminder of the deep-seated racism and violence that has plagued America for far too long. Thanks for watching today's documentary.
My gracious. Yeah. What happened in Tulsa? You know, the massacre of our people and in these situations. And it's yeah, it's harmful and hurtful. So man. Yeah, but I was happy to hear that at least they went to protect the man who they had the brother who they had locked up, and not just left him there. You know, they actually went to help the brother out. So that's a barakah. At least, even if it did turn into a different situation, you know, but still, at least they, you know, tried to help. And man, that's horrible. And I'm not surprised that, instead of restoring order, that people will come and help them out. I mean, that makes sense. That makes complete sense. And sad reality. So, imagine if we still had, if Greenwood would have been the Mecca, not the Mecca, I hate to use that term, but if Greenwood would have been the place for, black people in America, still flourishing, all these years later, if that hadn't happened. But of course it was going to happen because we've seen history where it's been a constant situation, a constant circumstance where anything that we built up, they destroyed. So yeah, that's been the repeated history. Man, well, we have that history now, that understanding, and we also got a comment here, very informative. Says she didn't know about the particular ones in different states, and not even the one that was in Texas where she was born and raised. So, Kelsey Keetra, give us some insight on the situation. Yeah. Well, I hope we can learn something from these, and make better preparation as we continue to await the return of the Messiah to the restoration of our people to prominence. That's the ideal of these videos, to inform us so that we can make better decisions and do things the best possible manner. So, yeah, that's it. Final thoughts I had.
Okay, Khan, I don't have much to say about it. These atrocities continue to happen, um, and there's been no compensation. We did hear about the community down in Rosewood being compensated $150,000, which
It's a
is
joke.
to me, it's a smack in the face, man.
Yeah.
Um, there's been talks of reparations being delivered to the descendants of captives, and I'm trying to place a numerical amount in my head that would suffice to all of the injustices that have happened and that continue to happen. And I'm almost, and this is gonna sound wicked, but I'm reminded of these heathens that came up against our people, and they
Mm.
ask him, our people are asking, what can we pay you for you all to leave us alone? And they say, okay, we'll leave y'all alone if you pluck out and give us your, well, I think it was either your eye or your
Yeah.
ear or something,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. Give us
So
your right eye.
yeah, so I mean, it's almost to that
Mm.
effect with me.
Yeah.
You continue to uh, negate justice and not deliver justice. Um, that price, I can't put a numerical value on it. You know
Mm.
what I mean? And here's the thing, the Abba is also putting hardness in their heart as well. And
Mm.
it's no coincidence, Ak, that we're, like you said, we didn't grow up hearing about these stories.
Right.
Why is it now that we are finding this information out? And I
Mm-hmm.
believe that it all correlates with this awakening,
Mm-hmm.
and what's to come.
Right.
You know, a
Absolutely.
lot of people are fearful and don't understand why
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be so much bloodshed, why the Messiah's garments are going to be, or the blood is going to be up to his horse's bridle.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
this is why it's been a lot of injustice here. Uh, you told me. I remember we were talking about the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah,
Mm-hmm.
and growing up, I always thought that was just because of the sexual immoral,
Immorality. Yeah.
immorally that they
Mm-hmm.
had. But they were savages. They would steal and plunder
Mm-hmm.
anybody. Likewise, the same things have been going on here in this country, and
Mm-hmm.
we see how it turned out for Sodom and Gomorrah.
Right.
So, I digress. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. You're exactly right. It's just it's a horrible situation, and it's to a point where the things that have happened, there is no money. There is no money that can resolve that. So there's no money. It's got to be the restoration of our people and the prominence, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what the promise of the Abba is that he's going to bring us, he's going to gather us, and we're going to be restored. And when I say restored, I mean at the time of that when we were the
Mm-hmm.
power of the earth, when we were the top nation in all the nation in all the earth, and it talks about the forces of the Gentiles being brought unto Israel, unto us, our people. And that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to bring everything that they stole and everything that they've gotten from their stealing to our people. And we will be restored and again be the permanent nation in all the earth.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Hallelujah.
hallelujah, indeed. That is the only thing that will suffice all of the injustice. As we're talking about here in America, we're not even talking about the rest of the world because our
Okay.
people have been
Kind of.
subject to the all all the earth uh, the captivities listed in Judges to the Assyrians to
Mm-hmm.
the Babylonians, the Chaldeans, the
Mm-hmm.
Medo-Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs, which we talked about last night. Uh, all of these people have had us in derision,
Mm-hmm.
and and they all got a tab to pay.
Yeah. Currently, there's so many of our people perishing in the Congo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for us to have these electronics.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's us for us to have these cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
And our people are suffering, man.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So it's going to be restoration made, but it's not going to be it's not going to be the inclusive Christian doctrine that's been taught in the earth. It's going to be the restoration of Israel. That's what the
Mhm.
scriptures teach, and it's going to be done with bloodshed. So uh, I know that may not make people feel comfortable, but it's not meant to. It's made to make us feel comfortable because we the ones are the direct product of all of these atrocities. So
Kind of like how are we able to secure our people to
right,
where they're in safety? Our safety and our deliverance means the destruction of a whole system for other people,
right.
and we got to be okay with that, man. You
It's
know, I don't want to see my people suffering.
no, not at all, not at all. We've suffered enough. We've suffered well enough, and I know it's a lot of it has to do with ourselves, has to do with what we cause to come upon ourselves, but it also has to do with wickedness in these other people's hearts, because that was them doing these wicked acts.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It was them that was their drive. They were the driving force behind that wickedness that they were doing. So, all right. With that, we're going to close out on this particular video. Certainly hope you learned something, maybe heard about something that you hadn't heard before. I'm honestly surprised he didn't cover that. I said 42. I think it was the 24. I may have had that backwards. I think about it, but I'm surprised he didn't cover that. I think mainly because it wasn't a lot of them killed. They were put to death afterwards
Hmm.
because of their involvement, but they were the ones killing uh, the people,
Con.
and that movie made me feel good until they got executed at the end. But otherwise, that was a feel good movie. So
Yeah, it's a good thing for brothers to take on a similar spirit that Moshe had,
hmm
and wanting to fight for one another.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, that's exactly what it was. They were defending one another and
Con.
standing up because that's what they had dealt with, all manner of just wickedness. If you haven't seen that movie, it's definitely worth a watch. We'll close out here, and we're going to close out with the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter number 12 and verse number 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear the Most High and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Understand that in all of these injustices that we were dealing with are because we did not fear the Most High and keep his commandments, because this is the whole reason that we are here. So instead, we were delivered into the hands of our adversaries, of those that hate us. But the Father is so generous, his promise is that he's going to deliver us out of those same people's hands and put
Hmm.
us back to where we are supposed to be. So, in the conclusion of the whole matter, we are to fear the Most High and keep his commandments, because this is the whole reason that we were made. I am your Akazaki Yahoo, joined by my most esteemed Akinanaya, giving all praises, honor, and great esteem unto the Most High Power, Yahuwah Bahashem, Yahushua Hamashiach, and to the 12 tribes of Israel who are scattered to the four quarters of the earth. I say Shalom Wabaruki, that is peace and blessings. And one day soon, very soon, Most High willing, we are going to be gathered from all the places wherein we are scattered, and we are
Hmm.
going to be restored to prominence as the promise of the Abba has been made, and he is one who cannot lie, and it's just a matter of time. So with that,
Hey,
uh,
Salakia,
go ahead.
did you get Ecclesiastes?
Oh yeah. I read it.
Okay, Con.
Yeah. I read it. Kind. but but yeah. So that'll be our the promise of the Father, and we will be restored. And even in the kingdom, we will have to keep the commandments of the Most High, because
That's
there can
right.
be no sin around him, because he don't do sin. And so he's going to put it inside of us, and we're going to do it without even thinking about it. So with that, again, our praises to the Father. And join us as we continue to expound. We go through Second Ezra, or First Ezra, First Ezra. And we'll finish up First Ezra and get started in the Second Ezra. That'll be coming up here real shortly. With that, peace and blessings to the family, and praises to the Most High. Shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom, shalom, Mr. Picard.
Hallelujah.